Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Shamika and this is Check the Rhymes. I'm super excited that you're here. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. Y'all, I am super excited about today's show as always because I ran into this young fella I say young fella like we're probably not the same age or something, at the Will Downing concert. I'm telling you, that Will Downing concert was a field of gold because I racked up so many interviews and connections. But anyway, let me get back to today's show. In the house today, because I was blown away by seeing him on stage, Adrian Crutchfield is here. Yes, y'all, he's worked with so many amazing people like Prince. So yes, we're going to talk about that and more. He's a saxophone player. He's right here in Charlotte, North Carolina, an amazing talent. So stay tuned. You don't want to miss today's show. Welcome to Check the Rhymes. Adrian, how are you?
I'm good. I'm hanging in there. I'm enjoying this weather while it lasts because it was cold.
Right. So in my intro, I was telling everybody that I actually came to a Will Downing show and I was blown away by seeing you perform. That was my first time seeing you perform, which is insane because I'm in Charlotte as well.
Well, I it's funny because I don't play Charlotte very often, so it's not too insane to assume that you hadn't seen my show. I love Charlotte. I live in Charlotte. Charlotte is home, but I don't really perform in town very often. Maybe 3 or 4 times a year at that. So
it's interesting that you say that because I feel like a lot of some of the other artists that I've talked to that live in Charlotte, they're like they don't perform here that much.
Yeah. You can't. Charlotte is not a very big support system for the arts. It's a banking city. So it's a great town. It's growing really fast. There's a lot of promise. But when it comes to the arts, there's not a huge support. There's a lot of art. There's a lot of talent, a lot of culture. But there's just not a huge support system for it yet. So you have to go and find your work elsewhere.
Right.
So that's what we do.
Me as a writer, same thing. I used to try to write locally, but I got frustrated. So I had to go on a bigger scale because you couldn't really make money locally.
Yeah. It's the same thing. Same idea.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so I had the pleasure of sitting next to your mother and your aunt backstage. And let me just tell you, I love them.
Yeah, my mom says everybody comes to see her, not me.
Yeah, but she was, she's like, I have to be on my best behavior. And I was like, I guess you better.
Yeah, right.
So let's go back to the beginning because you mentioned something on stage that you caught my attention when you said it.
Okay.
That you were at a Kenny G show.
Yes.
So tell us more about that. I don't want to give the story away. So
So I'm originally from a little town called Roanoke, Virginia. And my parents took me to a Kenny G show. They somehow acquired tickets, floor seats, really good seats.
Oh, wow.
To this Kenny G show, and they couldn't find a babysitter. So they had to take me with them. And I just was really enjoying myself. I think that was my first real experience with a live concert where it wasn't I had seen concert themed stuff Disney and stuff on ice and all that, whatever.
Yeah.
The circus, I'd seen all that stuff with the lighting and everything. But really, that was the first time I really experienced a musical act in that caliber. With that kind of a stage production. And so I was really, really into it. And, I couldn't see though, because we were in floor seats. So I couldn't see a lot. And I was 4. So.
Right. Yeah. Too small to see.
Yeah. So once people started standing up and, cause this is a time period where, Kenny G at that time was pretty much like Justin Timberlake,
Yeah.
It was pop music. So people were standing up. Now, most of the time we go to a jazz concert now, people are sitting and watching. But at that time, it was a pop concert, so people standing up, screaming, dancing. So my dad put me on his shoulders so I could see, and I spent most of the concert like on my dad's shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
And Kenny G saw me, and he kept walking past our little section, and I noticed he would stop. I could tell he was looking at something. I just didn't know what, and he would kind of stop for a minute and look, and then he'd say something to somebody in the band, and then he'd keep going, and eventually he stopped altogether and said, he said, "I gotta say this." He said, I could have sworn I saw a kid in the audience. And he's like, who brings a kid to a jazz concert? That's crazy, but I love it, So they started looking, through the crowd with the spotlight. And the whole time when he said this, I was thinking there's another kid in the audience. So for me, it's like there's somebody I can play with, because eventually,
Right.
I'm like, I've lost interest. But it was me, and the spotlight stopped on us, and he had my parents bring me up to the stage, and he asked me a bunch of questions about if I liked the music, if I liked saxophone, etc. And then he gave me my first saxophone. So that's pretty much what started my whole career and
Mm-hmm.
made
Do
me
you still
want to
have
become
the
a musician.
saxophone though?
I have it. It's in Virginia. It's really a wind synthesizer, so it's more similar to like an EWI, which is one of the instruments I play.
Okay.
And so it's an electronic wind instrument. So the one he gave me was a Casio wind synth, and I still have it. It's at my god family's house in Virginia, because I felt like that was the safest place for it.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. That's a great story though.
Yeah.
So now that you've been introduced to the saxophone and Kenny G's music, where do you go? Like, do you going through school? Were you in the band, or like where did you take lessons? Like, how did you develop those skills?
So for a long time, I was 4 when I got the horn, and then my mom got me an actual alto saxophone when I was like that Christmas. So right before I turned 5, I got an alto sax. But again, the first thing Kenny G told my parents was, don't let him start until he gets all his teeth, all his permanent teeth.
Oh, yeah, good advice.
Yeah, but to me it's a toy. So you can't tell me not to look at this. My mother.
I talked her up.
You can't tell me not to play with it. It's a toy. I want it. And he gave it to me. So I feel like that was my whole mentality. So yeah, but for the longest time the saxophone was a toy, and I could figure out how to play melodies on it, but I didn't really take it seriously until probably until the 5th grade.
Okay.
When I moved to Charlotte in the 4th grade.
Okay.
And started taking, school band in the 5th grade. And immediately that showed me that I didn't know as much as I thought I did on saxophone. And then eventually I was exposed to a lot more with the African American Children's Theater and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was able to really hone my craft, having private teachers like Michael Porter here in town and James Curry. And yeah, it all went from there, and I was able to grow with it. So really it started 5th grade, I'd say.
I love that. I think I do remember taking those classes where, like, I just remember the panic of I can't read the music, I can't figure it out, I don't understand. Let me just keep playing the recorder, whatever.
Yeah, it can be. I remember it being stressful. I have a recorder somewhere around here, but I remember it being very stressful, like not being able to do what I thought I could do.
Yeah.
And then also getting around a bunch of kids who had literally never done this before, and here I am, and the saxophone's been a part of my life for 10 years before that. So
right, wow.
Yeah, I'm like, or not 10 years, like 5 years.
Yeah.
So like, I'm thinking, oh, I'm gonna be the best, and I'm literally one of the worst players in the band. So yeah.
So were you in band in high school, or you just kind of stuck with the private lessons?
I did both. So let's see, fifth grade and then halfway through sixth grade, I went to public school, and then I got accepted into the North Carolina School of the Arts here in Charlotte,
Okay.
on Beachford Road. And I went there my second semester of sixth grade, and that's where everything kind of changed, because then it was your focus, your art was your focus. That's what you were basically being groomed to do that for the rest of your life.
It was like this is totally random. I was like, in my head, I'm picturing Fame.
Exactly. No, exactly. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what Northwest was at that time. It was,
Right.
the Fame School. And so yeah, I got there and I had a great teacher, band director named Jerry Lowe, who just recently retired, I think. But he was like that. I like to say father figure, but we all had our father figures, but he was like the at school father figure that basically nurtured everything we did. And he showed us the gig mentality. And we were playing gigs, like, in eighth and ninth grade, I was playing banquets for the Panthers and for the school board and for this thing. So, and we would make money, and it really kind of taught us how to manage our money. We would take part of the funding, because for some reason our school gave all the funding to the choir programs and never gave the band program anything. So I'm gonna get in trouble for saying that, but it was true. All the money we raised was like, we had spaghetti dinners where we'd have big band dances. We'd sell cookies and stuff after school. And we'd play gigs. And so if we had a gig, the jazz combo that went and played the gig, we'd split the pot so that, like, half the pot went into the boosters program, and then the other half was split amongst the band. So we learned how to, like, manage our income through that, and it was really cool. So Northwest was a big part of my life, and I was around like-minded people. That was the other cool thing, because everywhere else, it was just like I'd get into fights and stuff because I was the weird kid. So no, Northwest was the first time that I felt like I wanted to go to school. Like, even if I was sick, I wanted to get up and try to go to school. So that was a positive, really cool
amazing
thing.
I don't think I'm from Asheville, but I don't think we had any schools like that. None.
It's surprising, because you would think that Asheville would have something like that, because Asheville's a very artsy town.
But I'm old, so it didn't get artsy till later. So
you guys, I mean, I have a great story about Asheville too. I met Macaulay Culkin in Asheville.
Really? Was he filming?
He was filming Richie Rich.
Yes, Richie Rich.
At the Biltmore Estate. Yeah. I was on a field trip, third grade. I was on a field trip from Roanoke, Virginia to Asheville, and I met Richie Rich. That was cool.
Oh, how funny. That's crazy. Yeah, I don't think I ever met anybody at any field trip when we went over there.
Not even, who's the big guy that lives in Asheville? Jeff, what's the actor from Tron? Jeff, his name's on The Big Lebowski.
No, I've never met him.
What's his name?
Never met anybody. I know who you're talking about. I can't think of his name, but Andy
Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges, nope, never met him. Never met Andy McDowell, even though I believe my nephew used to hang out at her house all the time. I never got to go over there.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that moment when I get to meet somebody like Jeff Bridges in Asheville, just randomly. That would be cool. But I love Asheville. I think it's a great town.
Yeah, it's very artsy now. I'm sure there's a school like that now there. So you're cultivating your talent, and you're like loving going to school because of this. Then time to go to college. What did you do? Where did you go?
Oh man, I hopped around a bit. I realized after Northwest, going back to college was basically like, so after Northwest, my senior year in high school, I moved to Winston-Salem and went to North Carolina School of the Arts.
Oh yeah, okay.
And that was a great school too. Same concept. It was a conservatory, and it was really cool being in high school and being able to be amongst college kids and things like that, and really, cutting my teeth there. But they did not have a jazz program. They had a jazz band. And at the time, this is the thing about music education is jazz itself in music education is still fairly new. So commercial music, pop music and commercial music in music education is brand new. Like that's something they're still trying to figure out how to teach and how to organize. Right. So the closest thing for me to do in my collegiate career was jazz studies. Even though I don't really consider myself a jazz musician, jazz is like the element, jazz is the origins of where I come from. So I saw how that could be relevant. And if I was going to go to school, it was going to be, if I was going to get any kind of scholarship, I needed to approach it from that standpoint because that was the only option I had.
That's good.
Yeah. But unfortunately, jazz was still brand new to the collegiate environment. And so it wasn't really taken seriously. And so we didn't have a jazz program at North Carolina School of the Arts. So I was in the jazz band, but I studied classical saxophone there. And that's why I didn't stay there for college, is because they didn't have a jazz program. So I ended up at my freshman year, I ended up at UNC Greensboro, where they had a jazz program that is like basically seated by Miles Davis. And Miles Davis's estate is the one who basically funds that program.
Good idea.
Really cool. And I had some experience with UNCG from doing all-state jazz band a few years. So it seemed like a good idea. I went there hoping to study jazz and business to kind of create some kind of a music business thing.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen. And so I realized I wasn't happy there, and it was cold. I was like, I don't like getting up and going to school in ice. North Carolina doesn't really get a lot of snow. We get ice. Right. Especially down here on the coast, on this part of the Carolinas.
Yeah.
So I remember that when I was at North Carolina School of the Arts in the jazz band, we played a concert at Wake Forest one time, and the guest was the faculty from Florida State. Leon Anderson, Rodney Jordan, Dr. Peterson, and a few others, and they just blew me away. And so I reached out to Leon Anderson after my freshman year at UNCG and asked if they would consider bringing me down there, and they did. So I finished school at Florida State. It was warmer weather.
Yes.
Pretty girls and a lot of culture, because it was crazy. You wouldn't think so in Tallahassee, Florida, but there was so much culture, like different ethnicities and stuff, and just everything. It was a great melting pot. So I had a great time there. But what I realized was that I just hated the institution of education. I did not like being in classrooms. And so it didn't matter where I went. That was going to be the case. Yeah. So I just stayed and finished. I got through it.
It's interesting that you say that about Tallahassee. I don't know much about Tallahassee at all, except that the Black News Channel, that it was headquartered there. And then, because I always thought, like, why is it there? That's weird. But now that you're saying it was like a huge melting pot and a lot of culture.
Okay, so there are a few reasons probably why. I'm not sure. I have to do the research. But there are a few reasons why it would probably be in Tallahassee. One being that FAMU is there. Florida A&M University.
Oh, okay.
So I went to Florida State, but I was always on the yard, chasing AKAs around at FAM. Yeah. So I was always, I didn't pledge anything because I just wanted to have the freedom to maneuver, So
yeah.
But no. So Florida A&M is there. So I'm pretty sure some of the founding members were probably Rattlers.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then also you have a huge legal firm there with Mr. Crump.
That's true. I forgot about him.
Yeah, so Tallahassee's booming, especially for black culture. So it was a really cool thing. But yeah, I had the Black culture, I had the Latino culture there, I had the Native American culture there, I had the white culture there.
Yeah.
Everything you can imagine was there. Indians, just everybody, Asians, everybody was there. So it was just a really cool experience to be around so much diversity in one place in a small town.
And I had never heard of Roanoke until I went to college in Tennessee. And so I remember so many people that I met were from Roanoke, and I'm like, what? Where is that?
Yeah, Roanoke is it's literally a crater in the Blue Ridge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the best way to describe it is it's about an hour from Virginia Tech.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That makes sense, because it must not have been too far from, because I went to school at East Tennessee State, so that was
it's not far from the border. It's not
far
from
that's why I was like, it's got to be close if all these people from Roanoke are here.
Yeah.
So how did you end up working with all these amazing artists? Like, when I was reading your bio, I'm like, you worked with like everybody. Lionel, I love me some Lionel.
I love Rich, man. Lionel's my guy. I really don't know. All I could really say about it is, I guess my experience has been that people tend to work more with people that they like to be around. And so I try to be that person that everybody enjoys being around. It's not necessarily about the musical ability, because I can tell you 100 guys in any gig that I've done, I can show you 100 guys who could have done it better than me, and probably would have done it better than me. But I guess what got me those gigs was, number one was just being in the right place at the right time. Number two was personality and just being able to work with anybody. I try to be. There's only a handful of people that I just refuse to work with, and but for the most part, I try to be able. Even if I don't like someone, I can still, we can still make music. We can still communicate on stage together. And so that's number two, is just being that kind of person where you can adapt and be in an environment where people want you to be there and your energy is contributing. Number three is ability, talent. And then number four is, I would say, responsibility. So talent is one thing, but a lot of people, especially musicians, what we tend to do is we tend to rely on our talent. And so that means we think that we can just show up and our talent is going to make the way for us. Whereas you have these other people who may not be as talented as you, but they do the work. So they prepare, they do the homework, and therefore they show up and they're more prepared than you are. And so it's like a catch-22. So I try to stay in the middle of all those things and stay humble, because although I do consider myself talented or blessed, talent is only a part of it. And this other guy may not be as talented as me, but if he comes in and knows all the stuff better than I do, then he's going to have a leg up. So I got to be ready for that. And then on the other side, if I'm that guy that's preparing and there's another guy that's more talented than me, I got to make sure that I prepare so that I can show up and give him some competition. So,
I think that same concept would apply to, as you were saying it, I was like, I feel like I was listening to a podcast geared towards like, I guess it's kind of like TV hosts and writers and a little bit of everything. And the one I was listening to, they mentioned that, like, it's like, you can't always just rely on your talent. Nope. And you got to put in the work. Like, even, I think the one I was listening to earlier was like, master your craft, like learn other things and then show up, like, willing to work and knowing your stuff, all this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, that's right. I need to like do this, and this. But it just,
I would say this about it. The whole concept of mastering your craft, I don't necessarily agree with that. I
don't know that you can technically really.
So I was talking about this the other day. You realize that art is the only concept where they expect you to master it.
Good point.
So if I'm a doctor, they want me to practice as a professional. They want to pay me to practice in the medical field. If I'm a lawyer as a professional, they want to pay me to practice law.
Right.
Or practice politics. Right? Which means you're constantly learning. You're constantly trying to challenge yourself. But in art, the only time they take you seriously apparently is when you become a master of your craft.
Right. But how do you decide when you have reached master level?
You don't. There is no master level. You know, mastering assumes, it insinuates that you stop growing, you stop learning. And if you stop learning and stop growing, then you die. Right. You know, you can't stop. So there's no mastering. But the rest of it, I agree with 100%. Like, you got to prepare. Yeah. And you have to be well-rounded. You have to have all those things. As an artist, especially, it's really hard to just be an artist. You have to have some percentage be a business person. You have to have some part of you be a marketing person, you know, that type of thing. You can't be 100% artist unless you've got a team. And most of us don't have that. So, yeah.
Right. Okay. So tell me, like, what it was working. I mean, well, let me back up. Do you have to audition, I guess, to perform with these artists? Okay. So I don't know how the process works if you get to a certain mastery level and you don't have to anymore, how that works.
It's I mean, it's a little bit of reputation, but it's mostly audition based. And so I think the first real audition I ever did for an artist was while I was still at Florida State. You know, the one gig that I got without auditioning for it was Anthony Hamilton. I toured with Anthony Hamilton for a long time. Anthony's like a big brother for me. And he literally they called me and said, Anthony wants you to come out on the road. And I was at Florida State. So I left and came out with him for a summer. And then he made me go back to school. I was not going back to school. He made me go back. Shout outs to Anthony, because I always give him credit for that.
He always being somebody's daddy.
Always. Yeah, right. Always. So literally, you know Anthony then.
I've had him set me straight a couple times.
Oh yeah. And that's like my big bro. And he always trying to be somebody's daddy. You're absolutely right.
I just talked to him like 2 weeks ago.
That's
always
my man.
Trying to be somebody's daddy.
That's my guy. I'm talking about, like, on the road, if I didn't put my wardrobe up, he came at me. Not the management, not the wardrobe people. He come, where your pants at? What'd you do with your pants? I'm like, I remember one time being in Aruba, and this is right around the time that girl was killed and disappeared.
Oh yeah.
This is like 2006. Yeah. And
what's her name? Natalie something. Right? Yeah.
And I went for a walk on the beach. And when I got back to the hotel, I'll never forget this. I got back to the hotel, and Anthony was sitting at the bar. And I didn't think anything of it. So I said, hey, man, what's up? And he lit into me. Where you been? You didn't tell nobody where you're going. You can't do that, you know. And the other thing you got to understand is Anthony knows my mama. So, you know, and I've known Aunt. I moved to Charlotte in '94, and that's when I met Anthony. Anthony was a barber, and so he's been a close part of my, you know, a extended family for a long time. But he was always. So anyway, I say that to say, when he found out that I hadn't finished school yet, he made me go back, and so I got to give him credit for that. But the first audition that I did was for Neo, actually.
Wow.
Around that same time, like right after that, in Atlanta. And I thought I had the gig. They told me I had the gig, and something happened. They went with an Atlanta musician, which is typical. That's usually what happens. They want somebody that's in town with the rest of the band. That way they don't have to pay for housing when you have to rehearse and stuff like that. So I didn't get that gig, but the MD called me and said, you know, don't worry, I'm going to get you on something else. And like a few months later, he put me with Young Jeezy and Lil Wayne. That was an interesting tour. And so, but everything after that was an audition. With Lionel, I was in Burbank and I had to go to an audition, and that was one of the weirdest auditions I had because everybody auditioning, the promo that he sent out for the audition said he wanted a multi-instrumentalist that looked culturally ambiguous with lots of hair who could sing.
They do I guess I've never seen a casting notice for that or audition notice.
Yeah. So it was, I have hair. I just usually have it in a bun, but I have hair.
Yeah.
I am culturally ambiguous. Nobody knows what my ethnicity is most of the time. I can sing backgrounds and I play multiple instruments. So I went to the audition and there were like 15 me's there.
Wow.
And it was weird because I was like, well, I thought I was unique. There were like 15 guys there, all horn players too. And I had to do the audition on video. So Lionel is watching through a video feed. He's not there, but he's watching through a video feed. And I did the audition and literally was leaving there to go catch a flight to New York for a gig. And the manager came out and said, I'm going to give you a ride to the airport. And I said, okay, cool. And we got in the car and he said, yeah, he said, so when do you get back from New York? And I told him, and he said, yeah, he said, I didn't want to say it in there, but he said, Lionel's good. He says, you're the one, you got the gig. So we're going to let these other guys audition. But, you know, we'll be waiting for you when you get back. And I said, cool. And that was great. Same thing with Prince. We had to send in a video when he was considering us. We had to create a video and send it in to him. And that was our audition. Yeah. Wow.
Well, I do know Lionel I met him one time and it was random at the Ritz actually uptown. Yeah. And it was so funny because he had just did a show the night before. So I wasn't, I'm thinking, oh, like artists come, they leave after the show or the next day, but he was still there. And I was sitting there, it was crowded like around the bar area. And I was like, anybody reacting? But I think I just saw Lionel Richie just walk through and they were like, no, you didn't. And I'm like, I think I did. He went to the bathroom and I was like, I'm not going to follow him in there, but I'm just going to stand like a little ways because I know that was Lionel.
Yeah.
And he walked out and I was like, he's like, shh. And I was like, okay, can we take a picture really quick?
He's such Lionel was one of those people that in the music industry, I always assumed that everybody's kind of cutthroat and mean, because that's what I saw a lot of. Yeah. And so, but Lionel is genuinely, he is so genuine, and he's so, what you see, there are a couple guys where it's like what you see is what they are. Lionel, what you see on TV, that's him. It's not an act, and I love him to death, man. I think he's such an amazing human being. Dave Koz is also like that, where it's like what you see and what you hear is not an act. That's who he is, and it's really cool to see. It's really refreshing. So it encourages me that not everybody in the music industry is a demon, So
Dave Koz, because I wrote it down that you're going. I know I'm going to double back to the Prince audition, but Dave Koz, you're doing a cruise. Talk about that a little bit.
So Dave Koz has a cruise every year, and the cool thing about his cruise, as opposed, because there's so many of them now, there's so many cruises out there, especially when it comes to smooth jazz. But the cool thing about Dave Koz's cruise, if I were a little more confident, I'd say it's because that's the only one I'm doing. But no, the cool thing about Dave's cruise is every year their destinations are different. So last year was the British Isles. So they cruised to the British Isles. The year before that, I'm not sure where it was, but this year it's Spain, Portugal, and Morocco.
Yeah, I noticed that because I was like, I thought it was just gonna be like a couple of days. I was like, oh, it keeps going.
Yeah, so it's a week-long cruise. Yeah, and we're doing 3 legs of it, so it's 3 weeks. And like I said, it's Dave. So Dave, not only is he a great guy, he's just a great person. I've been able to, over the last few years, I've become friends with him, and it's weird being friends with your idols.
Yes.
Really weird. Prince, being friends with Prince was still weird to me. But being friends with your idols is really crazy. And Dave, I've just watched him and learned so much from him. But it's really amazing how he puts this together, because his main thing is wanting to showcase the people that he loves to see. So he brings on all these artists that he enjoys watching and then showcases them. It's not even about him at all. Like, he plays the show, of course, but he makes it about every other artist. And even if you're in the house band, you still have these opportunities to shine. And it's a really cool experience. And then you of course, if you're not so much, if you're a guest on the ship, and you may not be as exposed to these newer artists, then you get the chance to meet and be exposed to these artists and see what they do. So it's really fun, really great.
Yeah, it does sound fun. So going back to the Prince audition, how did you find out that you were going to get the gig to work with him?
You know, I get asked that question a lot, and I still really don't have an answer for it per se, like, because everything was so mysterious. Everything with Prince has always been so mysterious.
Yeah.
I'll say this: myself and Marcus Anderson were the two that he called. At the time, he was doing the Welcome to America tour. He came to Charlotte.
I was there.
Anthony Hamilton was the opening act.
I was there, yep.
Marcus Anderson and I were in Anthony's horn section for that. And when they found out they were going to be opening for Prince, Anthony and the team came to us and said, we need to put together a horn section. Because at the time, Prince had a killing horn section. He had, and Greg Boyer and Maceo and Candy Dolfer, and, and so, but for some reason, on this leg of the tour, he did not have horns. So anyway, we put together a horn section for the Anthony Hamilton show, and we rocked out on Prince's stage.
Yeah. And
we got word, because we knew all, like, Shelby J and Cassandra O'Neal, and a lot of those people in New Power Generation were Carolinians.
Yeah.
John Blackwell is from South Carolina, or was from South Carolina.
Yeah.
Shelby J is from Greensboro area.
Yeah.
Cassandra O'Neal had lived in Charlotte for a long time, so she was the homegirl. So we got word that he was really impressed with what we did. And then a few months later, Marcus came to me and said, hey man, I need you to cover some gigs for me, because I got a call to go and work with this artist that Prince is producing. So can you cover the gigs for me? And I was like, Marcus is one of my best friends. So I was like, of course, I got you. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And then, like, maybe 20 minutes later, after this call with Marcus, I got a call, and they were like, hey, this is such and such with Paisley Park. And it's the same stuff that Marcus told me. Right. So my reaction was, they were like, so would you be willing to come out and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I kid you not. I said, yeah, that's real funny, Marcus. And I hung up the phone. And Cassandra O'Neal called me a few minutes later and was like, did you hang up on Paisley Park? And I said, no, I hung up on Marcus. And she's like, what are you talking about? I said, Marcus told me he's going out to Paisley to work with some artist or whatever. And so he had somebody call me and play, because that's what we do. Yeah. And she was like, no, Adrian, that was them. They want you to come too. So I was like, oh. So she said, I'm going to have them call you back. And I said, yeah, please have them call me back. And they called back, and I said, yeah, I'm sorry. I got Sprint, and my signal's really bad. Sprint. And we worked it out. So they asked Marcus and I to build a horn section for Andy Allo, who is an actress and singer. And Prince was basically developing her. And so we built this horn section for her in her show. And then, true to form, Prince, I'm a Prince fan. So my goal, no disrespect to Andy, because I love Andy, no disrespect, but it was never about you. It's like, I knew that if we came in and we did our job and we did it well, eventually he would poach us from her, because that's what he did. That's how he built his bands, is he would produce somebody else and he'd pick who he liked out of that band and use them for himself. Right. And so that's what happened, is eventually he started bringing in Prince music for us to learn, and that's when I was like, we're in. So that's I guess Andy technically was our audition.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What was Prince like? Because it just seems very, I mean, from me being a fan, I just loved when he was shady. I love that. Was he shady in person?
Very much. Very much. He was the king of shade. Petty.
Oh, I love that.
He was human. You know, that's the thing that people don't tend to think about, is he was a human being, and he wasn't perfect, but man, was he amazing. Just an amazing being. And he had something that most of us don't have. I don't even know what to call it, but whatever it is, he had it, and it drew people to him. It for me, Prince, how do I explain it? So do you know what a muse is?
Yes.
So Prince always had muses. You know, if you look at it, and I mean artistically. A lot of people think of a muse as something sexual, but I mean strictly artistically. He always had muses, and sometimes I'd be like, why does he always have these certain people that he will bring in just to spend time with them? Because those are the people that made him want to create. Those are the people that inspired creativity in him, and their vibrations resonated with his. And I realized that, in a lot of ways, Prince was a muse to us. So Prince was a muse to me for sure. He inspired creativity. He made me resonate. And he inspired courage. He inspired me to be more confident. But yeah, he was a human being. So I saw him do shady stuff. I saw him say shady things. I saw him, be petty. But at the same time, I saw him build. Like, one of the things people don't talk about is his charity. Prince was a Jehovah's Witness to some extent. So he did not believe in boasting about charity. So if he did get involved in any charity, you never heard about it.
Yeah, I was going to say I've never heard about any of it.
And there are so many that he was involved in, and probably mainly he was like the main contributor to, but he never talked about. And so like just half of like the Boys and Girls Clubs in the Midwest, their funding was coming from Paisley Park, like stuff like that. He never talked about it. He would so because he felt like, what's the point of doing it if I'm using it to talk about it and make myself look good, and I really admired that. But yeah, he was, and then as far as music and art, definitely one of the most creative and innovative people I've ever encountered. I do think he was one of the greatest artists of our time, if not the greatest artist of our time. I mean, some people will argue. The most common argument. Everybody's on the.
I know. I'm holding it in. I'm loving.
we can have that conversation, and I'll say this: I have nothing but admiration for Mike. Like, I love Michael Jackson. But the way I solve that with people is really simple. And I'm not saying that Prince was perfect. I'm not saying that Prince wrote everything, because we know, like, for example, Most Beautiful Girl in the World, they were co-writers. This song, they were co-writers. But I usually ask, what's your favorite Michael Jackson song?
You name one. But I know.
Okay, give me one of your favorite Michael Jackson songs.
Okay, so for today, I'll just pick one. Butterflies.
Okay, Butterfly, that's a good one. And who wrote that?
Are you Googling?
I'm Googling right now. Who wrote it? I know Marsha Ambrosius had something to do with it.
Yeah. Now I want to Google.
I'll Google it.
Okay.
It. Who wrote Butterflies by Michael Jackson?
I thought she did. Floetry did, but I don't know.
Yeah. So Marsha Ambrosius and Andre Harris.
Okay.
So basically,
and I also love Human Nature. So I know.
Yeah.
I know.
That's probably one of my favorites is Human Nature.
Yeah.
But Quincy did Quincy write that?
Wasn't it Rod? What's his last name?
Rodney Temperton?
Yeah. Did he write that one?
No.
No? Who wrote that one?
Actually, I'm looking it up right now. So Quincy Jones produced it. And this is a great example of that story. Because I've heard similar stories. So speaking of Rodney Temperton, what's the other song? Rock With You.
Yes.
So Rock With You was originally supposed to be for the Bee Gees.
I can't even imagine that.
Yeah, and they didn't want it. And so so basically Mike was like, I'll take it, and he made it. It wouldn't be the song it is today if it wasn't.
Yeah.
But Human Nature is actually written by the guys from Toto.
Did I know that?
I didn't know that.
I assumed it was Rod.
I didn't know that. I mean, I knew somebody wrote it. I thought it was probably Quincy, but Quincy produced it. But the guys from Toto wrote Human Nature. And so my point being is, okay, you got Marsha Ambrosius and Andre Harris. You got the guys from Toto. You got Rodney Temperton. You got Quincy. These are the guys writing. These are the people writing and producing Michael, right?
Okay.
So Mike, I'll put it like this. Mike is probably the greatest performer of all times, in my opinion.
Okay, I'll give you that.
Mike, you can't touch Mike. Mike is the greatest performer of all times, right? I think Prince is the greatest artist of all times. Not taking away from Mike's artistry because he is amazing.
Right.
But he ain't Prince. Like Prince had other people in the room, but did not need them to be there in order to make these songs what they were. That's what makes Prince such a great artist. And then on top of that, the fact that on most of these records, he's playing everything.
Mm-hmm.
He's producing it. He's singing it. It takes me back to Ray Charles doing the "Oh Johnny's." That's innovative. So that's my argument. And some people will argue and say, well, what about Wendy and Lisa? And what about this and that and whatever? And I'm like, yeah, those songs wouldn't be.
Yeah.
They would not be what they are if Prince hadn't done what he did to them. And like I said, he did have co-writers and things like that. But the majority of his workload was him. So if you look up who wrote it, who produced it, who did this, who did that, it's usually going to say Prince Rogers Nelson. Prince, he was just an amazing entity to watch.
Mm-hmm.
I think business-wise, like watching him do business and watching him interact with people, the way he handled the execs from like Warner Brothers and places like that, masterful. And they hated him for it. They hated that he knew more than they did. He always had the checkmate, and that was the funny thing. It was like watching a great football game, like a blowout. It's like watching your team blow the other team out. That's what it was every time.
Right. So were you? Well, I guess you were. Were you were working with him before he died? Like right leading up to.
The last time I saw Prince in person was February of 2016. The last time I talked to him was at the top of April, mid-April. Okay. Right, it was like a week before he died. I was supposed to go to Atlanta with him. We were recording a record with a bass player named Mono Neon. So again, here he is developing a new artist and building a band around him.
Right.
And I was part of that. And so he was going in a new direction. We had recorded a few songs, and he wanted us to come and start hanging out as part of the band for the after parties for his he was doing a solo piano and a microphone run.
Yeah.
Which is just him singing at the piano. But he wanted to do after parties where he'd have a jam session, like a band, like a jazz jam.
Right.
So I remember going to Charlotte Douglas Airport. This has never happened before. But I remember getting there and going to check in. Usually I check in on my phone, and I couldn't check in. So I went to the kiosk and I couldn't check in. And I went to the desk and they were like, yeah, your flight's being canceled. So immediately my thought process is like, did this fool just fire me? Like, I'm supposed to be on the way to a gig. Did he just fire me? And so I called and I spoke to him. They put me on the phone with him. And I was like, what's up, man? Like, I can't get on the flight. And he said he had been sick. He hadn't been feeling well. And he was going to go do the Atlanta show, but he wasn't going to do the after party. So he said, don't worry about coming down to Atlanta. I'll just see you in Minneapolis next week or a week after next. And I said, okay, cool. And I went home. And later that night is when he had the emergency landing.
Yeah.
And all that stuff. And I called to check again. They said he's fine. He's okay. He's recovering. He wore himself out at that show. And the next thing I know, he was riding his bike. There were news reports of him riding his bike. And then he had a party. He had a disco party.
Yeah.
I wrote, again, he never had his own phone. So you have to reach him through other people. Right. So I would reach out to management and be like, all right, literally like, are you okay? You good? Everything good? You need me to come out? And he'd write me back. I'm fine. Thank you. Whatever. And so I was like, okay, he's fine. And I went down to Florida for the Seabreeze Jazz Fest, and I was having breakfast, and my phone just started ringing off the hook, and that was somebody was found at Paisley Park, and I was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was with him until the end, essentially.
Did you know that he was taking medicine or anything like that?
Personally, I don't believe he was. Do you want to go down that road?
I mean, I have heard many different things, and
I'm just saying it's your show. So I was
come on, okay. Let's go down that road. Let me get comfortable. Let's go down that road.
I'll go down that road. So I may be considered a conspiracy theorist for this, but
you're probably about to say what some of us have been thinking. So go ahead.
And the reason why I don't consider myself a conspiracy theorist is, in order for it to be conspiracy, would mean it's speculation on something I did not experience. I didn't see, or I didn't hear. I wasn't around, but I was there. So, the thing about it is, I can't comment on what he did before 2012 because I didn't know the man.
Right.
I really can't tell you what he was doing in 2012 because I was just a work for hire. I mean, I got to hang out with him, but we didn't become really close like that until 2015. And so in 2015, what I can tell you about Prince in 2015 is that he was straight edge. He didn't drink. He didn't do any drugs. The man didn't even want to take ibuprofen. So he ate great. I mean, he ate super healthy. I always looked forward to going to Paisley because I knew I was going to lose weight because we ate really good. We ate very healthily. Now he was a sucker for cakes and snacks, but when it came to a meal prep, like meals were always lentils and really good stuff.
Yeah.
He looked amazing. He looked better than me. He looked better than anybody my age. Same thing for Lionel Richie. Lionel Richie is one of the healthiest. I mean, his skin just radiates. He glows. So Prince is the same. Very in shape, very healthy, very alert. I've been around drug abuse in my life. I've seen it. I know it very well. I'm not naive to the signs of addiction or drug abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can tell you without a doubt that I did not see any of those things in Prince. And I'm talking about, this is a time where I would literally go to Minneapolis just to go to the movies. Like, he would fly me out just so we could have a party and hang out. I didn't play a note.
Right.
So I was literally hanging out with this man. And he didn't drink. When he was drinking, I don't think I ever saw him drink. I knew there was always Louis the 14th or whatever it is around, but I think he had that around for guests, for like guest of honor. But I never actually saw him partake. Even when we would be on gigs, the whole band would be drinking except for him. And so he didn't do any of those things. And also, when you're dealing with somebody who has drug abuse, there are signs, you can see it, dilated pupils, fidgeting, twitching, scratching, things, anything, mannerisms, conversation, how they lead their conversations, manipulation, things like that. None of that. And so, how do I explain it? I feel like if he did take something, he had to be in a really bad place to take it. Like, he had to be in a really desperate situation. And even then, I don't think he knew what he was taking. I think he mistook it for something else if he took it.
Yeah. Well, what was it on the news around that time? I was working in the newsroom. I remember some of the reports were about the different prescriptions under different names at all the pharmacies and all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, you got to think about it like this. First of all, he's always going to have yes men around. So people that will just do whatever he says because they don't want to go home. They don't want to be shunned. They don't want to be shaded by Prince. You don't want that. But also, the thing that nobody talks about and that you have to consider, especially after Michael, is if he does want to take some kind of medication for his pain because he has hip problems, he has knee problems from all those splits and jumps off the speakers that he did. He was walking with a cane sometimes. So if he did want to take some kind of pain medication, he did not want the word to get out that he had a prescription, because that would mean all this other drama and hearsay and gossip and tabloids and blah, 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 blah. And he just didn't want to, he avoided that. So he would just get, I would assume that that's why you had all these different prescriptions in different names. Yeah. Because you can't even use your alias because everybody knows your alias. Right. So again, when it came to those prescriptions and things, the other thing that happened in the news, I don't know if you remember this, you were working in the news, so you might. The first report said that, the toxicology report said that he overdosed on an oxycodone of some sort that was unrelated to fentanyl. And then they did a raid. I think it was like 6 months later, they raided Paisley Park. Yeah. And that's when they found the labeled stuff that was actually fentanyl, but was labeled as something else. Right. At that point, the official cause of death was changed to an overdose on fentanyl. Right. Prince was cremated a couple days after he died. They did an autopsy, did a toxicology report. They cremated him. Jehovah's Witness, you got to be burned or buried 3 days within a week or whatever. Right. So he was cremated like 3 days after. Right. I just don't understand how you can change a toxicology report without a body 6 months later. Good point. That was suspicious to me. Like, if you thought he died of an overdose on some kind of oxycodone not related to fentanyl, then, and you made a mistake, cool, but you can't then change it and say, oh yeah, no, we know for sure it was fentanyl. If you don't have a body to sample, you don't have a body to do a toxicology report on. So that was super suspicious. The way everything went down was super suspicious. The whole thing of them finding him in the elevator that he did not use. He never used that elevator.
I did hear that he never used the elevator, so it was very strange. I thought, did somebody put him there? Like, did somebody drug him? Did somebody put him there? Like all these all these
Yeah,
questions, but I don't feel
I
like we ever really got
we're
answers.
not gonna get an answer. I
Yeah.
don't think we're gonna get an answer, and that's the thing is I think that again I think he probably wasn't feeling well still. He was probably recovering from. I think he had pneumonia or something. He was recovering from it. He
Hmm.
probably felt terrible and took some pills, and those pills, when you depending on where he got them from or
Right.
where whoever got them from,
Yeah.
they were probably laced with fentanyl
Yeah.
because that's a lot of the street drugs are laced now with fentanyl.
Hmm.
Um, and he took them and unexpectedly took too much. You
Yeah.
know, if I take ibuprofen and it says it's ibuprofen, and I take two pills to right now and take two more pills in 6 hours, if that ibuprofen has fentanyl in it, I'm in trouble.
Right.
So
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, all of that stuff with there's a lot more to it than
Hmm.
than we got time for. But
Right.
but none of it added up. And at the end of the day, what I can tell you without a doubt is that Prince was not uh he was not partaking in any drug usage.
Yeah.
And that's the
Yeah.
thing they want to make you believe is that he overdosed like most rock stars do. But no,
Yeah. No,
he was very
we
focused.
never saw
Yeah,
him like you could tell when Michael was on something, and you could
yeah,
tell definitely see when Whitney was, but I never saw Prince
no,
like that at all.
he never did that stuff. I think also because he saw it in other people, and he didn't want, Now, like I said, I can't speak on. I'm sure he did some stuff back in the '90s, and I'm sure he did some stuff in the early 2000s. I'm sure he did some stuff before I got there.
Yeah.
But during the time that I was there, I did not see any signs that would lead me to believe that he was partaking in any kind of drug. And I do believe that I would know. I would notice it.
Yeah.
Because I see it all the time. So I'm a musician. you know.
Right.
So I see it all the time. But yeah, he was not. If there's anything I can offer as far as that, because everybody's gonna have their opinion, and a lot of
Mhm.
people are gonna say that what I'm saying is conspiracy and things like that. And that's fair. But the one thing I can tell people is if they don't believe anything else that I say, the one thing that they have to believe is that he was not taking prescription drugs, let alone non-prescription drugs.
Right.
So whatever happened was not supposed to happen.
Thank you for that because I
Yeah,
think sometimes maybe hearing it from somebody that was actually around him
yeah,
helps sort through all the confusing things that were being thrown out back then and even probably now.
yeah.
Um, Dang, this interview's been good. I'm like, I have so many more questions, but I want to take, you're gonna have to come back. But
Yeah,
before
we'll
we
come back.
go, yeah, but before we go though, real quick, let everybody know where they can find your music because you've got 3 albums
Yeah,
out, and I'm sure they can purchase it on your website and tell everybody where to find you on social media.
yeah. So first, social media. If you want to find me, the easiest way is on Instagram, and my Instagram is Real Good Sax. It's that easy. I have what's the other one called? TikTok. I have it. It's
Yeah.
also Real Good Sax, but I'm gonna be honest with you, I hate TikTok. Uh, so I barely check it. So if you write me on TikTok and I don't respond, I'm sorry. Uh, Instagram, Real Good Sax. Twitter, Good Sax. Facebook, it's just my name, Adrian Crutchfield. If you want, you can literally just go on Google and type in Real Good Sax or Good Sax, and it'll pull up me. As far as my records, they're everywhere: iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, any of the platforms, streaming platforms. CD Baby, they sell. I mean, I have physical copies too, that you can get online, and so anywhere you go online, you just type in my name, you will find my music.
Thank you, Adrian, so
Yeah.
much. I feel like I was like stalking you backstage, but but I'm so glad we could finally coordinate this. And tell your mother I say hello.
I will. I will. She'll probably be watching whenever you post this.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
don't think I know I was she was saying she was on Facebook all the time and I forgot to get her Facebook info.
She's the marketing master on Facebook. She you if you send it, if you want it out, Send it to her.
I will. I will.